Have you ever met someone who speaks with absolute confidence, even when they're completely wrong? Not just once, almost every single time. The strange part is, the smartest people in the room usually hesitate before giving an answer, while the least informed person often speaks with the most certainty. Why? Psychologists have spent decades studying this exact behavior. And what they discovered is surprisingly uncomfortable, because low intelligence isn't always about IQ. It rarely announces itself. It doesn't wear a label. It doesn't have a certain look. Instead, it quietly reveals itself through small, everyday behaviors that most people never notice. A simple conversation, a disagreement, even the way someone reacts to being corrected, can reveal far more about their thinking than any intelligence test ever could. But here's the twist. Every single one of us has displayed at least one of these behaviors at some point, which means this video isn't about judging other people. It's about recognizing the hidden mental habits that can quietly limit our own growth. Because once you see these patterns, you start noticing them everywhere. And the fifth sign might be the one almost everyone is guilty of. Here's sign number 1. They confuse confidence with competence. The first sign is surprisingly difficult to notice, because confidence looks a lot like intelligence. Imagine asking two people the same difficult question. The first person pauses, thinks carefully, and says, "I'm not completely sure, but here's what I think." The second person answers immediately. No hesitation, no doubt, absolute certainty. Most people instinctively trust the second person, not because they're more intelligent, but because they sound more convincing. And that's where our brains often make a mistake. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a well-known cognitive bias where people with the least knowledge about a subject often overestimate how much they actually know. Why? Because the skills required to perform well are often the same skills required to recognize your own mistakes. If you don't fully understand something, you may also struggle to realize that you don't understand it. Ironically, highly intelligent people often do the opposite. The more they learn, the more aware they become of everything they don't know. That's why experts usually ask more questions than they answer, while people with shallow understanding often speak as if there's nothing left to learn. So the real warning sign isn't confidence itself, it's confidence without curiosity. And once you notice that pattern, you'll start seeing it everywhere. But the second sign is even more common, because almost everyone has done it without realizing. Sign number 2, they'd rather be right than learn. Have you ever tried correcting someone, only to watch them immediately become defensive? Not because you embarrassed them, but because they treated being wrong like a personal attack. That's the second hidden sign. People with limited thinking often confuse being corrected with being disrespected. Instead of asking, "Could I be missing something?" their first instinct is, "How do I prove I'm right?" And that's a dangerous mindset, because intelligence isn't measured by how often you're right. It's measured by how quickly you're willing to update your beliefs when new evidence appears. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Our brains naturally search for information that supports what we already believe, while quietly ignoring anything that challenges it. The difference is, curious people notice this bias and question themselves. Rigid thinkers rarely do. Imagine two people reading the exact same article. One asks, "What can I learn from this?" The other asks, "How can I use this to prove I'm already right?" They read the same words, but they leave with completely different minds. That's why some people grow wiser every year, while others repeat the same mistakes for decades. Because learning doesn't begin when you find answers. It begins the moment you're comfortable admitting you might be wrong. And the third sign is probably the most invisible one of all, because it hides behind something that looks completely normal: silence. Sign number 3. They stop being curious. Here's something most people never realize. The opposite of intelligence isn't ignorance. It's the belief that there's nothing left to learn. Think about the last time a child asked, "Why?" Then asked, "But why?" And then, "Why again?" It can be exhausting, but it's also how the human brain learns. Curiosity is one of the strongest predictors of lifelong intelligence. Not because curious people are born smarter, but because they never stop collecting new information. Now compare that to someone who instantly dismisses new ideas. That's stupid. That will never work. "I've already seen enough." Notice something? Those aren't signs of certainty. They're signs that the mind has quietly stopped exploring. Psychologists often refer to this as cognitive rigidity, the tendency to hold on to the same beliefs even when reality keeps presenting new evidence. And here's the dangerous part. A rigid mind doesn't just reject new information. It slowly begins rejecting new experiences, new skills, new perspectives, even new people, because anything unfamiliar starts to feel like a threat instead of an opportunity. That's why some people seem to grow every single year, while others feel exactly the same. 5, 10, even 20 years later. Their age changed, their knowledge didn't. So the real question isn't, how intelligent are you? It's, when was the last time you changed your mind after learning something new? Because that answer may reveal more about your intelligence than any IQ test ever could. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The next sign has nothing to do with knowledge, nothing to do with education, and nothing to do with grades. In fact, some of the most educated people in the world still struggle with it. Because intelligence isn't only about how you think, it's also about how you react. When your emotions take control. Here is sign number 4. They let their emotions do their thinking. Imagine you're having a normal conversation. You disagree with someone, just slightly. But within seconds, their voice gets louder, their face tightens, and suddenly, the conversation isn't about the idea anymore. It's about winning. That's the 4th hidden sign. People with lower cognitive maturity often mistake emotional intensity for a stronger argument. But the louder someone becomes, the less they're usually listening. Psychologists have long studied what happens when emotions take over the brain. During moments of anger, fear, or humiliation, the emotional centers of the brain can temporarily overpower the areas responsible for careful reasoning. In simple terms, the brain shifts from asking, "What's true?" to asking, "How do I protect my ego?" And that's a huge difference, because intelligence isn't just about solving difficult problems. It's also about staying calm long enough to think clearly. Notice the people you respect the most. When someone disagrees with them, they don't immediately explode. They pause. They ask questions. Sometimes, they even thank the other person for offering a different perspective. Not because they enjoy being wrong, but because they understand something most people don't. Every disagreement is an opportunity to discover a blind spot. And blind spots are impossible to fix if your emotions never allow you to see them. The smartest people aren't the ones who never get emotional. They're the ones who don't let temporary emotions make permanent decisions. Which brings us to the 5th, and perhaps the most revealing sign of all. It's so common that almost everyone watching this video has done it at least once. But very few people ever recognize it. Here's the final sign. Sign number 5, they always blame something else. And it's the easiest one to overlook, because on the surface, it often sounds reasonable. A failed project, the timing was bad, a broken relationship, the other person was the problem, a missed opportunity. Life just isn't fair. Of course, sometimes those things are true. Life can be unfair. People can let us down, and circumstances do matter. But when every failure is explained by something outside ourselves, growth quietly comes to a stop. Psychologists call this an external locus of control. It's the tendency to believe that other people, bad luck, or the world itself is responsible for nearly everything that happens to us. The problem isn't that external factors exist. The problem is believing you have no role in the outcome. Because the moment you stop asking, "What could I have done differently?" you'll also stop improving. The most intelligent people aren't perfect. They make mistakes. They fail. Sometimes spectacularly. But instead of protecting their ego, they examine it. Instead of looking for someone to blame, they look for something to learn. And that's a habit anyone can develop. So, what does low intelligence actually look like? It's not speaking slowly, it's not having less education, and it's certainly not your IQ score alone. Sometimes, it looks like confidence without curiosity, defending beliefs instead of questioning them, stopping yourself from learning, letting emotions make your decisions, or refusing to take responsibility for your own growth. The surprising truth is, intelligence isn't a fixed trait. It's a habit of asking better questions. Listening before reacting, changing your mind when the evidence changes, and staying curious, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the smartest person in the room is rarely the one who believes they already know everything. It's usually the one who's still willing to learn. So before you judge someone else's intelligence, ask yourself one simple question. Which of these 5 habits have I shown without even realizing it? That single question. may be the smartest thing you ask yourself today. If you enjoy exploring the hidden psychology behind everyday human behavior, subscribe to Mind Unlocked channel, because understanding your mind is the first step toward changing your life. Until next time, stay curious.